She was shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Not from the cold, though. God knows Kansas winter could freeze a soul solid. But from the way every door in Dustwater had slammed in her face.
We'd make it this far.
No rooms for unaccompanied women.
We just needed a little faith.
That's what they'd said.
We're safe
What they
now.
meant was, we don't want your kind here. Eliza Monroe had run from one kind of hell only to find another. Then a voice cut through the diner's silence. You're the seamstress. She turned. A man with grief-carved eyes stood in the shadows. You'll freeze tonight. Come on.
I suggest you
Before
calm
we
down
begin,
before you
if
regret
you're
it.
new here, hit that subscribe button and stay with me until the very end of this story. Comment below what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these tales travel. Now let's step back to where it all began.
I won't leave you again. You promised to love him, comfort
The
him,
stagecoach
honor
had
and
left
keep him
yesterday.
in sickness and
Eliza
health,
stood on the wooden
forsaking
platform
all
carpet
others.
bag clutched in both hands, staring at the empty road like it might conjure the coach back through sheer force of will. Behind her, Dustwater bustled with the kind of frontier efficiency that had no patience for stragglers. Wagons creaked past, horses stamped, men shouted orders about lumber and feed. Nobody looked at her twice. She'd been traveling for 8 days straight. 3 trains, 2 coaches, and 1 wagon ride that had nearly rattled her spine loose, all to reach a job she'd secured through a carefully worded letter to the Double Bar Ranch. Seamstress needed. Room and board included. Respectable establishment. The reply had come within 2 weeks. Position yours. Arrive March 10th. Coach departs Dustwater 6 a.m. Today was March 11th. The train delays hadn't been her fault. The conductor in Kansas City had looked at her with flat indifference when she'd tried to explain. Train runs when it runs, miss, not when you need it to. Now she was here 1 day late with $3.17 to her name, and the Double Bar Ranch was 20 miles north through terrain she'd been warned not to attempt alone. Excuse me, she said to a man loading crates onto a wagon. Is there another coach to the Double Bar this week, perhaps? He didn't even pause. Next one's Saturday. Saturday. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. That's 4 days from now. Yes, ma'am. Could I perhaps hire a wagon or a horse? Now he looked at her. His eyes traveled from her worn gray traveling dress to her scuffed boots to the carpet bag that had seen better years. You got money for that? The $3 in her pocket suddenly felt very small. I have some. Horses run $5 a day plus deposit. Wagons are 10. He turned back to his crates. Try the boarding house on Main Street. The boarding house had a sign that read, Rooms available in fresh white paint. Eliza climbed the steps, straightened her collar, and pushed open the door. The woman behind the desk looked up from her ledger. She was perhaps 50, with iron gray hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face. Her eyes did the same assessment the wagon drivers had done, only slower and far less kind. Help you? Yes, ma'am. I need a room for 4 nights, until the Saturday coach. You traveling alone? Yes, ma'am. The woman's mouth thinned. We don't rent to unaccompanied women. Eliza blinked. I beg your pardon. You heard me clear enough. But the sign says... Sign says what it says. Policy is policy. The woman returned to her ledger with an air of finality. Try the hotel on 2nd Street. The hotel on 2nd Street had a lobby that smelled of cigar smoke and boot leather. The clerk was younger, maybe 30, with slicked hair and a mustache that looked drawn on with grease pencil. 1 room, 4 nights, Eliza said, keeping her voice steady. You got a husband, father, brother? The question landed like a slap. No. Then I can't help you. Why not? His smile was thin and did not reach his eyes. This is a respectable establishment, miss. We don't cater to certain types. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Eliza's hands tightened on her carpet bag. I am a seamstress traveling to employment at the Double Bar Ranch. I missed my coach by 1 day due to train delays beyond my control. I need lodging until Saturday. That is all. That's a real sad story. He wasn't even looking at her anymore. But policy's policy. Good day, miss. She tried 3 more establishments. The boarding house near the church, no single women. The rooms above the general store, all full up. They weren't. The widow who rented out her spare room. Sorry, dear, people talk. Can't risk my reputation. By the time the sun started its descent toward the horizon, Eliza's feet ached. Her stomach was eating itself, and something cold and hard had settled in her chest that had nothing to do with the March wind. She found herself standing outside a small diner with condensation fogging its windows. Through the glass, she could see perhaps a dozen people eating, talking, living their ordinary lives. The smell of fried meat and coffee drifted out every time the door opened. She had eaten nothing but stale bread since yesterday. With the last shred of dignity she could muster, Eliza pushed open the door. Warmth hit her face. The conversations didn't stop exactly, but they paused. Eyes flicked toward her. A woman whispered something to her companion. A man at the counter turned fully around to stare. Eliza walked to a small table in the back corner, set down her carpet bag, and sat. A waitress approached, young, maybe 20, with flour dusting her apron. "What'll you have?" "Coffee, please." "And, do you have stew?" 10 cents for coffee, 20 for stew. Eliza calculated rapidly. 30 cents. She could manage 30 cents. "Both, please." The girl nodded and left. The coffee came first, bitter and scalding and absolutely perfect. Eliza wrapped both hands around the cup and felt warmth seep into her frozen fingers. The stew followed, thin but hot, with actual chunks of potato and something that might have been beef. She ate slowly, making it last, and tried not to think about the night ahead. Where would she sleep? The stagecoach office closed at 7. The train depot had benches, but they'd chase her off. She'd seen the signs. No loitering. She could try to stay in the diner, nurse coffee until closing, but eventually they'd make her leave. Which meant outside. In March. In Kansas territory, where the night temperature could drop below freezing even after the worst of winter had passed. Eliza stared into her stew and felt something inside her begin to crack. She had run so far, 800 miles from a landlord whose kindness had come with expectations she'd refused to meet. A man who'd smiled while backing her into corners, who'd appeared at her door at odd hours with gifts and implications. When she'd finally gathered the courage to say no, clearly firmly, his smile had turned to something else entirely. "You'll regret this," Clayton Harper had said, standing in her doorway with his hat in his hands and fury in his eyes. "I've been generous with you, Miss Monroe. You'll find the world far less forgiving than I've been." Within a week, her other clients had mysteriously canceled their orders. The women she'd sewn for suddenly had no need for alterations. The shopkeeper who'd let her use his back room for fittings asked her not to return. Nothing personal, he'd said, not meeting her eyes. Mr. Harper's a valued customer. The world, it turned out, belonged to men like Clayton Harper. So she'd packed everything she owned, spent her last savings on train tickets, and written to every ranch and homestead within 500 miles that might need a seamstress. Only one had written back. The Double Bar Ranch. Position yours. Respectable establishment. And now, 1 day late, she was trapped in a town that wouldn't shelter her, waiting for a coach that wouldn't come until Saturday, with $3 that wouldn't last that long. The door opened. Cold air rushed in along with a man in a heavy coat and boots that tracked mud across the floor. He made his way to the counter, nodded to the waitress, and ordered coffee. Eliza watched him without really seeing him. She was calculating. $3.17 minus 30 cents for this meal equals $2.87. Saturday was 4 days away. If she ate only once per day, that was $1.20, leaving her with $1.67 for lodging, which she couldn't secure anyway because no one would rent to her. You're the seamstress. Eliza's head snapped up. The man who'd just entered was standing 3 feet from her table. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 40, with brown hair going gray at the temples, and a face that looked like it had been carved from the same hard wood as the frontier itself. His eyes were dark, not unkind, but distant, like he was looking at her from somewhere very far away. Yes, she managed. How did you know? Heard talk of a woman heading to the double bar. Only one ranch out that way looking for a seamstress. He gestured at the empty chair across from her. May I? She nodded, too surprised to do otherwise. He removed his hat and studied her with that same distant expression. I'm Isaiah Dune. I drive freight for the ranches north of here. You missed your coach. It wasn't a question. The train was delayed, Eliza said, and hated how defensive she sounded. It wasn't my fault. Didn't say it was. He took a sip of the coffee the waitress had brought over. But you're stuck here until Saturday, and from the looks of things, nobody's willing to take you in. Heat flooded Eliza's cheeks. You heard about that. Small town, word travels. Then you understand why I can't stay here. She heard her voice starting to shake and fought to steady it. I'll freeze tonight. I've been to every boarding house, every hotel. They all... She stopped, swallowing hard. They all think I'm something I'm not. Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I have a cabin, small place edge of town. You can stay there. Eliza stared at him. I'm not... She started. I know what you're not, he said calmly. And I know what you are. A woman trying to get to a job. That's all. He finished his coffee and stood. It's getting dark. You coming or not? I don't even know you. No, you don't. He put his hat back on. But you know this town. So you've got a choice: freeze on the street or take a chance on a stranger who's offering you a warm place to sleep. Eliza looked around the diner. The other patrons had gone back to their meals, but she could feel their awareness of her like a physical weight. Tomorrow, they'd wake up warm in their beds, eat breakfast, go about their lives. She'd wake up, if she woke up at all, cold, stiff, and even more desperate than she was now. Why would you help me? She asked quietly. Isaiah's expression didn't change, but something moved behind his eyes, something old and painful. Because I know what it's like when nobody will. He turned toward the door. Eliza grabbed her carpet bag and followed. The wind hit them the moment they stepped outside. March in Kansas territory carried winter's ghost, not quite killing cold, but close enough to promise misery. Isaiah walked with long strides, hands in his pockets, not looking back to see if she followed. She hurried to keep pace. Where is your cabin? East Edge, past the smithy. Do you live alone? Yes. And you're willing to let a complete stranger stay with you? Looks like it. His tone wasn't unkind, just empty, like he was speaking from some hollow place inside himself that had nothing left to give except basic human decency. They walked in silence through streets that were already settling into evening. Lamps flickered to life in windows. Somewhere a dog barked. The smell of wood smoke drifted on the wind. The cabin appeared out of the gathering darkness like something from a folk tale. Small, square, weathered gray with a stone chimney that leaked white smoke into the purple sky. A single window glowed with firelight. Isaiah opened the door and gestured for her to enter. Heat rushed out to meet her. Eliza stepped inside and felt her entire body sag with relief. The cabin was sparse but clean. One room, maybe 12 by 15 feet. A bed in one corner, a table and 2 chairs in the center, a small stove against one wall. Shelves held canned goods, a few books, a tin cup. The floor was wood-worn smooth by years of footsteps. And everywhere it was warm. It's not much, Isaiah said, closing the door behind them. But it's dry and the stove works. Eliza set down her carpet bag and realized her hands were shaking. From cold, from exhaustion, from the sudden, overwhelming relief of being somewhere that didn't hate her. Thank you, she whispered. Isaiah was already moving toward the far corner. He pulled a folded blanket from a trunk and carried it to a spot near the stove. He spread it out on the floor added a second blanket on top, then looked at her. "Right here," he said simply. "It's warm and safe." Eliza stared at the makeshift bed, then at him. "Where will you sleep?" "In my bed." He gestured at the narrow cot in the corner. "Same as always." "I couldn't. This is your home. I should take the floor." "No." The word was firm, but not harsh. "You're a guest. Guests don't sleep on bare floor." "But, Miss Monroe." He looked at her fully for the first time, and she saw exhaustion in his face that matched her own. "I'm offering you a place to sleep, not asking you to debate it. You can say yes or no, but I don't have the energy for negotiation." Something in his bluntness steadied her. This wasn't manipulation or expectation. This was just simple, tired kindness. "Yes," she said quietly. "Thank you." He nodded. "There's bread and cheese on the shelf if you're still hungry. Outhouse is out back, you'll need the lantern. I'll be asleep in 10 minutes, so if you need anything, ask now." "I don't need anything." "Good." He turned away, pulled off his boots, and lay down on his bed fully clothed. Within moments, his breathing had deepened into sleep. Eliza stood in the center of the warm cabin and felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time in months, maybe years, she was somewhere safe. She knelt beside the blankets Isaiah had laid out, removed her own boots, and lay down. The floor was hard, but the blankets were wool and heavy, and the heat from the stove wrapped around her like arms. She closed her eyes and slept without fear. Morning arrived with the smell of bacon. Eliza woke slowly, confused by warmth and the unfamiliar sound of someone moving nearby. For one disoriented moment, she thought she was back in her old boarding house in Kansas City, that the past month had been a nightmare, that she'd wake to find everything unchanged. Then she opened her eyes and saw the cabin. Isaiah stood at the stove, his back to her, tending a cast-iron pan. Coffee burbled in a pot. Weak sunlight filtered through the single window. She sat up, and her spine made several concerning sounds. "Morning," Isaiah said without turning around. "Coffee's ready if you want it." "What time is it?" "Little past 7. Eliza stood wincing. Sleeping on a floor, even a floor with blankets, reminded every bone in her body of its existence. She folded the blankets carefully and set them on the trunk. Isaiah poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. "Bacon'll be done in a minute. There's bread in the box." "You don't have to feed me. I'm cooking anyway. Might as well cook for 2. He said it in the same flat, matter-of-fact tone he said everything. No warmth, but no coldness either. Just factual. They ate in silence. The bacon was crispy, the bread fresh enough, the coffee strong. Eliza wanted to savor it, but hunger made her rush. She forced herself to slow down to be civilized. When they'd finished, Isaiah stood and pulled on his coat. "I've got a freight run to the Miller place. Be back around dark." "What should I do you want me to leave?" He looked at her like the question puzzled him. "Why would I want that? I just thought, you're staying until Saturday. That was the arrangement." He picked up his hat. "Lock the door when I'm gone. Don't open it unless you know who's knocking. There's more food in the box if you get hungry." "Mr. Dune." "Isaiah." "Isaiah." She stood cup in hand and met his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" For a moment he was very still. Then he said, "Because nobody did it for me when I needed it." He left before she could respond. Eliza stood alone in the cabin, listening to his footsteps fade, and wondered what kind of man offered shelter to strangers with the same energy most people reserved for feeding stray cats, necessary, impersonal, and somehow deeply kind. She spent the morning exploring her temporary sanctuary. There wasn't much to see. Isaiah's possessions were minimal, practical. A few changes of clothes, tools for his work, books surprising that including a worn copy of Dickens and something called 2 Years Before the Mast. No photographs, no letters, nothing that spoke of family or friends, or any life beyond these 4 walls. But the cabin was clean, the corners swept, the dishes washed and stacked, the stove maintained. He took care of his space, even if he seemed to have given up on everything else. By noon, restlessness drove her outside. The day was cold but clear, and she needed to learn the town if she was going to survive 4 days here. She locked the door as instructed and made her way toward Main Street. Dustwater in daylight was bigger than she'd thought. Maybe 300 people with a main street that ran a quarter mile and side streets that petered out into prairie. There was a general store, a bank, a church, a school, and the usual collection of businesses that kept frontier towns alive: blacksmith, dry goods, feed store, saloon. Eliza walked slowly, keeping her head high despite the stares. A woman sweeping her porch paused to watch her pass. 2 men outside the smithy stopped talking to look. A child pointed, and her mother quickly pulled her hand down. By the time she reached the church, Eliza's cheeks burned. The reverend was outside, an older man with white hair and kind eyes, repairing a loose board on the steps. "Excuse me," Eliza said. He looked up. "Yes, miss. I'm a seamstress. I was wondering if anyone in town might need alterations or mending work." His expression shifted, not unkind but cautious. "You're the woman staying with Isaiah Dune." Of course everyone already knew. "Yes," she said evenly. "He was kind enough to offer me shelter until the Saturday coach." "I see." The Reverend set down his hammer. "My wife is ill. She's been in bed for weeks. Before she took sick, she did mending for several families in town. I imagine those families could use someone to take over the work." Hope flared in Eliza's chest. "I'd be happy to help." "Can you do fine work, lace repairs, that sort of thing?" "Yes, sir. I trained in a dress shop in Kansas City. I can do anything from hems to wedding dresses." He studied her for a long moment. Then he said, "Wait here." He disappeared into the church and returned with a bundle of fabric, a dress with torn lace at the collar and cuffs. "This belongs to Mrs. Patterson. She's been asking about it for a month. If you can repair the lace to match the original pattern, I'll pay you $1 and recommend you to the other families." $1, a full $1. "I can have it ready by tomorrow," Eliza said. "Good." He handed her the dress. "Bring it to the church when you're finished. And Miss..." "Yes. Isaiah Dune is a good man. Don't let the town gossip convince you otherwise." He went back to his hammering before she could ask what he meant. Eliza returned to the cabin with the dress clutched under her arm and her first real hope in days burning in her chest. She had work. She could earn money. She could prove to this town that she was exactly what she'd claimed to be: a seamstress, nothing more, nothing less. She spent the afternoon by the window, using the last of the daylight, her needle flying through the delicate lace. The pattern was complex, but not impossible. She'd done harder work in Kansas City. Her fingers remembered the rhythm loop: pull, tighten, secure. By the time Isaiah returned at dusk, she'd finished half the repairs. He came through the door carrying cold and the smell of horses. "You eat?" "Not yet. I was working." He glanced at the dress spread across the table. "Got yourself a job?" "The Reverend hired me to repair this. If I do it well, he'll recommend me to others." Isaiah nodded and moved to the stove. Good. That was all. No questions about how she'd managed it. No concern about the propriety of her working. Just good. They ate another simple meal: beans and cornbread this time, and Eliza found herself studying him in the lamplight. His face was weathered-lined around the eyes and mouth. His hands were scarred and calloused. He ate mechanically, like fueling a machine. "How long have you lived here?" she asked. 3 years. "Do you like it?" He looked at her like she'd asked if he liked breathing. "It's a place." "But do you have friends, family?" Something closed in his expression. "No." The finality of it stopped her questions cold. They cleaned up in silence. Isaiah added wood to the stove. Eliza returned to her mending by lamplight while he sat in the corner reading his Dickens. The cabin filled with the comfortable quiet of two people who'd learned not to need conversation. At 9, Isaiah stood. "I'm turning in. I'll work a bit longer. Don't burn too much lamp oil." He lay down in his bed, and within minutes, his breathing evened out. Eliza worked for another hour, then carefully folded the dress and prepared her blankets. She lay down near the stove and stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside and Isaiah's steady breathing in the corner. 2 days ago she'd been terrified alone, rejected by an entire town. Now she was warm, fed, and employed, thanks to a silent man who asked nothing in return. She didn't understand it. But lying there in the dark, she felt something shift inside her chest, some small, fragile thing that had been crushed back in Kansas City beginning to unfold again. Maybe the world didn't entirely belong to men like Clayton Harper. Maybe there were still men like Isaiah Dune. She fell asleep thinking about that, and for the first time in months, she didn't dream of running. The next morning, Eliza finished the dress. She held it up to the light, examining every stitch. The lace matched perfectly. You couldn't tell where the original ended and her repairs began. Mrs. Patterson would have no complaints. Isaiah had already left for his freight run. He'd left bread and coffee on the stove still warm. Eliza ate quickly, wrapped the dress carefully in paper, and headed to the church. The Reverend was in his office working on Sunday's sermon. When Eliza showed him the finished dress, his eyebrows rose. "This is excellent work." "Thank you." He paid her $1 in coins that felt heavy and real in her palm. "I'll tell the ladies about you. Expect more work by tomorrow." "I appreciate it, Reverend." "Where are you working from Isaiah's cabin?" She hesitated. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "You should know people will talk. They're already talking." "I know." "Does it bother you?" Eliza thought about Kansas City, about Clayton Harper's smile and the way every door had closed when he decided she should be punished, about running 800 miles to escape a reputation she'd never earned. "It bothers me," she said quietly. "But I can't control what people think. I can only control what I do." The Reverend's expression softened. "That's wisdom most folks never learn. You'll be all right, Miss Monroe." She left the church with her $1 and her dignity intact and walked back through town with her head high. The stares continued. The whispers followed. But she'd been hired. She'd done good work. She'd earned money. Let them whisper. By midweek, 3 more families had brought her mending. A torn coat. A child's dress that needed letting out. Curtains that required hemming. Simple work, but steady. Eliza established a routine wake. When Isaiah did eat breakfast in near silence work through the morning. While he was gone, return finished pieces to the church in the afternoon, work through the evening while he read. They spoke little, but the silence between them felt less empty each day. On Thursday night, Isaiah came home with supplies, flour, sugar, coffee, dried beans. "You didn't need to buy food for me," Eliza said. "You're eating it. Might as well have enough. I can pay you back." He gave her a look. "With what, the $3 you arrived with?" She flushed. "I've earned money this week." "Keep it. You'll need it when you get to the double bar." "Isaiah, Miss Monroe." He set down the supplies and faced her. "I offered you shelter. That includes food. We're not negotiating this." His tone was the same flat, factual one he always used. But there was something underneath it, a stubbornness maybe, or just exhaustion with the whole concept of owing and owed. "Thank you," Eliza said quietly. He nodded and went back to organizing the supplies. That night, as they ate dinner, Eliza finally asked the question that had been building all week. "Why did you leave your last town?" Isaiah's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Who said I left a town? You said nobody helped you when you needed it. That means you needed help somewhere else." He set down his fork. For a long moment, he just sat there staring at his plate. Then he said, "I had a wife, a daughter, 5 years ago." Eliza's breath caught. Fever took them both in the same week. Sarah first, then Emily 3 days later. Emily was 6. His voice was flat mechanical, like he was reading a report. After that, I kept driving freight because it was the only thing I knew how to do. One day, I was bringing supplies to a homestead outside my town. Family of 4 husband, wife, 2 boys. Their wagon had broken down in the middle of a stream crossing. The current was strong. The father was trying to get the boys out, but the wagon was going under. He stopped, picked up his coffee, drank. I went in after them, got the boys out, got the mother out, but the father, his leg was caught in the wheel. I tried to free him, but the wagon shifted and... He set down the cup. It went under. He drowned. I couldn't save him. Oh God, Eliza whispered. Town blamed me. Said I should have got the father first. That I'd let a man die to save children. Said maybe I did it on purpose because I'd lost my own daughter and wanted someone else to hurt the same way. His jaw tightened. They ran me out. Said I brought death wherever I went. Eliza felt tears burn her eyes. That's not true. Doesn't matter if it's true. Matters what people believe. He met her gaze, and she saw something in his eyes that made her chest ache, a deep old grief that had calcified into numbness. So I came here. Dustwater didn't know me. Didn't care. I work, I keep to myself, and nobody bothers me. You saved 2 children and a woman, Eliza said fiercely. You risked your life trying to save the father. That town was wrong to blame you. Maybe, but blame doesn't care about right or wrong. He stood and carried his plate to the basin. It only cares about someone to put it on. He left the table and went to his corner, picking up his book. Eliza sat in the quiet cabin, her dinner forgotten, and understood suddenly why Isaiah had helped her. Why he'd offered shelter without questions or expectations. Because he knew what it was like to be blamed for something that wasn't your fault. Because he knew what it was like when no one would help. Because somewhere under all that grief and numbness, there was still enough of him left to offer someone else what no one had offered him. Kindness. She stood, washed the dishes, and returned to her mending. But something had shifted between them, some understanding that lived in the space between silence and speech. That night, before she lay down on her blankets, Eliza spoke into the darkness. Thank you, Isaiah, for everything. A long pause. Then, you're welcome. And for the first time all week, she heard something in his voice that wasn't flat or empty. Something almost human. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Eliza woke early, packed her carpetbag, and counted her money, $12.40. The week's mending work had paid better than she'd hoped. It was enough to get her through the first month at the double bar if she was careful. Isaiah was already up, coffee made, bacon frying. Coach leaves at 6, he said. You'll want to eat before you go. They shared their last meal in the cabin that had been her refuge. Eliza wanted to say something to thank him properly, to tell him that his kindness had restored something in her that she'd thought permanently broken, but the words caught in her throat. Isaiah stood when they'd finished. I'll walk you to the station. You don't have to. I know. They walked through Dustwater in the early light, past the waking town, past the people already beginning to stir. Eliza saw a few familiar faces, the Reverend sweeping his steps. Mrs. Patterson heading to the general store, the waitress from the diner opening windows. Some nodded. Some didn't. At the station, the coach was already waiting. The driver was checking the horse's harness. Isaiah set down her carpetbag. You got everything? Yes. Double Bar's a good ranch. You'll do fine there. I hope so. They stood awkwardly for a moment. Then Eliza did something she hadn't planned. She stepped forward and hugged him. Isaiah went rigid. For a heartbeat, she thought he might pull away. Then slowly, his arms came up and wrapped around her, tentative, uncertain, like he'd forgotten how. Thank you, Eliza whispered against his shoulder. For seeing me, for helping me, for being kind when no one else would. His arms tightened briefly. Then he stepped back. You take care of yourself, Miss Monroe. Eliza. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Eliza, will you be all right?" The question seemed to surprise him. "I've been all right for 3 years." "That's not what I asked." He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "I'll be fine. You worry about yourself." The driver called out, "Boarding for the double bar." Eliza picked up her carpet bag and climbed into the coach. Through the window, she saw Isaiah standing on the platform, hands in his pockets, watching her go. The coach lurched forward. Eliza pressed her hand to the glass, and just before they rounded the corner, she saw him raise one hand in farewell. Then he was gone, and Dustwater was gone, and she was heading north toward the Double Bar Ranch, and whatever future waited there. But as the miles passed, and the prairie rolled by, Eliza found herself thinking not about what lay ahead, but about what she'd left behind. A quiet man in a small cabin. A man who'd saved her when he couldn't save himself. A man who'd shown her that even in the coldest places, even after the worst losses, there could still be warmth. She didn't know if she'd ever see Isaiah Dune again. But she'd remember him, and the way he'd pulled back a blanket and said simply, "Right here." The way he'd offered her safety when the whole world had turned her away. The way he'd given her back her faith in human kindness. "Right here," he'd said. And for 1 week, in a harsh frontier town, "right here" had meant everything. The Double Bar Ranch sprawled across the northern prairie like something out of a fever dream, bigger than Eliza had imagined, with a main house, 3 bunkhouses, stables, a barn that could swallow a church, and enough cattle to populate a small town. The foreman, a leathery man named Dutch, met her at the gate with a handshake that could crack walnuts. "You're the seamstress," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. Eliza Monroe." "Well, Miss Monroe, you're a week late, but Mrs. Garrett's been patient. She's waiting for you at the house." Mrs. Garrett turned out to be a woman in her 50s, with silver hair pinned up like a crown, and eyes that could spot a crooked hem from 50 paces. She looked Eliza up and down with the thoroughness of someone inspecting livestock. "You know your way around a needle." "Yes, ma'am." "Can you work with leather?" "I've done some." "Good. Half the men here tear their clothes faster than I can replace them. You'll have your hands full." She gestured toward the back of the house. "There's a room off the kitchen. Small, but it's yours. Meals with the household staff. Sundays off. Any questions?" "No, ma'am." "Then get settled. I'll bring you the mending pile after supper." The room was small. Mrs. Garrett hadn't lied about that, but it had a real bed, a window that looked out over the prairie, and a door that locked from the inside. After a week on Isaiah's floor, it felt like a palace. Eliza unpacked her carpet bag, hung her 2 dresses on pegs, and sat on the bed. She'd made it. 800 miles, countless rejections, 1 terrifying week in Dustwater, and she'd made it. So why did she feel like she'd left something behind? The first month at the Double Bar passed in a blur of torn shirts, ripped trousers, and canvas coats that needed patching. The ranch hands were polite but distant. The household staff, 2 women and a younger girl, treated her with cautious friendliness. Mrs. Garrett was fair but exacting. The work was steady, the pay came on time, and nobody asked questions about where she'd come from or why. It should have been perfect. But at night, lying in her small room, Eliza found herself thinking about Dustwater, about the cabin, about the quiet man who'd offered her shelter without conditions. She wondered if Isaiah was all right. If he was still driving freight, still reading his Dickens, still living in that careful isolation he'd built around himself. She wondered if he ever thought about her. Probably not. She'd been a temporary problem he'd solved. A stray he'd fed until she could move on. That was all. Still, she wondered. In early April, Dutch rode into town for supplies and returned with mail. Among the usual letters and invoices was one addressed to Eliza in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it in her room after supper. "Miss Monroe, I hope this letter finds you well at the Double Bar. I wanted to inform you that your mending work in Dustwater has not been forgotten. Several families have asked if you might return to do alterations for their spring wardrobes. If you have time during your Sundays off, they would pay fair wages for your services. Also, I thought you should know, Isaiah Dune asked about you last week. He wanted to ensure you'd arrived safely at the ranch. I assured him you had, but he seemed concerned. It's not like him to concern himself with others, so I thought you'd want to know. Yours in faith, Reverend Thomas Whitmore. Eliza read the letter 3 times. Isaiah had asked about her. The man who barely spoke, who kept the world at arm's length, who'd made it clear he preferred isolation, he'd asked about her. Something warm unfurled in her chest. She sat down at the small table in her room, pulled out paper and pen, and began to write. Dear Reverend Whitmore, thank you for your letter. I'm glad the families in Dustwater remember my work. I would be happy to return on Sundays to help them. Please tell Mr. Dune that I arrived safely and that the double bar is everything I'd hoped. Tell him I'm grateful for his kindness and that I think of him often. She paused, pen hovering over paper. Was that too much? Too personal? But it was true. She did think of him often. She signed the letter, sealed it, and gave it to Dutch to post the next time he went to town. 2 weeks later, on her first Sunday off, Eliza borrowed a horse from the ranch and rode the 20 miles back to Dustwater. The town looked the same: gray buildings, muddy streets, people who stared. But this time, when she walked into the general store, the owner nodded a greeting. When she passed the church, Reverend Whitmore waved from the steps. The waitress at the diner smiled. Heard you're doing well at the double bar, she said, pouring coffee. I am, thank you. Mrs. Patterson's been asking for you. Says nobody can repair lace like you can. Eliza spent the afternoon at the church meeting with families who needed alterations. A wedding dress that needed taking in. A man's suit that needed letting out. Children's clothes that needed mending. She took notes, promised delivery in 2 weeks, and collected deposits. By the time she finished, the sun was starting its descent. She stood on the church steps looking toward the east edge of town and made a decision. 5 minutes later, she was knocking on Isaiah's door. No answer. She knocked again. Isaiah? It's Eliza Monroe. Silence. Disappointment settled in her stomach. Of course. It was Sunday evening. He was probably out on a freight run or at the diner or anywhere but here. She was about to turn away when the door opened. Isaiah stood in the doorway, hair disheveled, shirt half-buttoned, looking like he'd just woken up. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her. Eliza. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. I was just resting. He rubbed his face. What are you doing here? I came back to do mending work. The Reverend wrote to me. He said you'd asked about me. Something crossed Isaiah's face. Embarrassment maybe, or discomfort at being caught caring. Just wanted to make sure you got there safe. I did. Thank you. They stood there awkwardly, him in the doorway, her on the step. Do you want to come in? He asked finally. I don't want to impose. You're not. She followed him inside. The cabin looked exactly as she remembered, spare clean, the stove cold. It was warmer outside than in. You haven't been eating, Eliza said, looking at the empty stove, the unwashed dishes in the basin. I eat. When? He shrugged. When I remember. Something in her chest tightened. Isaiah. I'm fine, Eliza. You're not fine. This place is freezing, you look exhausted, and you're not taking care of yourself. I'm managing. That's not the same as being fine. He turned away, moving to the stove. Why are you here? I told you, I came back to do mending work. And you thought you'd check on me? Yes. Why? The question caught her off guard. Because you helped me. Because I care what happens to you. You shouldn't. Too late. He looked at her, then really looked at her, and she saw something in his face that broke her heart. Not anger, not irritation, just confusion. like he couldn't understand why anyone would bother caring about him. "Isaiah," she said softly, "when was the last time someone asked if you were all right?" He didn't answer. "When was the last time someone cooked you a meal? Sat with you, just spent time with you because they wanted to? I don't need those things. Everyone needs those things. Not me." "Yes, you." She moved closer. "You're not a machine. You're a person. And people need other people whether they want to admit it or not. Eliza, let me help you." "I don't need help." "Then let me be your friend." The word hung in the air between them. Isaiah stared at her like she'd suggested something impossible. "Why would you want that?" "Because you're kind. Because you saw me when no one else would. Because you gave me shelter and asked nothing in return." She held his gaze. "Because I think maybe you've been alone long enough." For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he said quietly, "I don't know how to do that anymore." "Do what?" "Be someone's friend. Be anything to anyone. Then we'll figure it out together." He shook his head slowly. "You should go back to the ranch, Eliza. Build your life there. Don't waste time on a broken man in a dying town." "You're not broken." "Yes, I am." "No." She moved closer, close enough to see the grief etched into every line of his face. "You're hurt. That's different. Broken things can't be fixed. Hurt things can heal." "I don't want to heal." "Why not?" "Because healing means forgetting, and I can't forget them." Understanding crashed over her. "Sarah and Emily." He flinched at their names. "I don't want to stop missing them. It's all I have left." "Oh, Isaiah." Tears burned Eliza's eyes. "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry the loss without it crushing you. Your wife and daughter, they wouldn't want you to live like this. Alone. Empty. Just existing. You didn't know them." "No, but I know you. And the man who gave me shelter, who asked if I was safe, who still has Dickens on his shelf and keeps his cabin clean, even though no one sees it, that man still cares, still hopes, still has something left to give." Isaiah's jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're asking." "I'm not asking anything. I'm offering. Friendship. Someone to talk to. Someone who cares if you're eating or sleeping or drowning in grief." She reached out and touched his arm. "You don't have to be alone anymore." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then at her face. Something in his expression cracked just slightly, just enough. "I don't know if I can do this," he said, voice rough. "Do what?" "Let someone in again." "Then start small. Have dinner with me tonight, that's all. Just dinner." He hesitated. Then so quietly she almost missed it. "All right, Mom." They cooked together, Eliza taking charge because Isaiah clearly hadn't cooked a real meal in weeks. She found potatoes, onions, a bit of dried beef. Not much, but enough. She chopped while he set the table. She stirred while he made coffee. The silence between them felt different now. Not empty, not uncomfortable, just companionable. When they sat down to eat, Isaiah said, "You've gotten better at cooking." "I've had practice. Mrs. Garrett's cook has been teaching me." "You like it there, the ranch." "I do. The work is steady. Mrs. Garrett is fair. The other staff are kind." She paused. "But I missed Dustwater." "This town." "Why?" "Because someone here was kind to me when no one else would be." Isaiah focused on his food. "That was nothing." "It wasn't nothing to me." He didn't respond, but his shoulders relaxed slightly. They talked through dinner, small things at first. The weather, the ranch, the freight runs. But gradually, carefully, they began to share more. Eliza told him about Mrs. Garrett's impossible standards, and the ranch hand who'd proposed to her 3 times in 2 weeks. Isaiah told her about a freight run gone wrong when his wagon had lost a wheel in the middle of nowhere. By the time they finished eating, it was full dark outside. I should go, Eliza said, standing. I need to ride back before it gets too late. It's already too late. You can't ride 20 miles in the dark. I'll manage. Like hell you will. He stood. You'll stay here. Take the bed. I'll sleep on the floor. Isaiah, we're not arguing about this. She wanted to protest, but the firmness in his voice stopped her. This wasn't about propriety or obligation. This was about him caring whether she was safe. All right, she said quietly. Thank you. He nodded and began preparing a bedroll on the floor. Eliza lay down in his bed, the same bed he'd slept in while she took the floor a month ago. The sheets smelled like wood smoke and soap. She stared at the ceiling, listening to Isaiah settle onto the floor, and felt something warm and complicated blooming in her chest. Isaiah, she said into the darkness. Yeah. I'm glad you asked the Reverend about me. A long pause. Then, I'm glad you came back. She smiled into the dark. Good night. Good night, Eliza. She fell asleep feeling safer than she had since arriving at the double bar. Eliza woke to the smell of coffee and found Isaiah already up dressed and cooking eggs. They ate quickly. She needed to get back to the ranch, and she promised to return the following Sunday. You don't have to, Isaiah said as she prepared to leave. I know. I want to. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. All right then. She rode back to the double bar with her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. The pattern established itself over the following Sundays. Eliza would ride to Dustwater in the morning, do mending work for the local families, and then visit Isaiah in the evening. Sometimes they cooked together. Sometimes they just talked. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence while he read and she sewed. The town noticed, of course. Whispers followed her through the streets. She heard the word improper more than once. But the Reverend defended her. Miss Monroe is doing honest work and maintaining a friendship with a good man. And gradually the whispers lost their venom. By June, Eliza had saved enough money to buy Isaiah a new coat. His old one was threadbare, held together more by stubbornness than stitching. She presented it to him on a Sunday evening wrapped in brown paper. What's this? He asked. Open it. He unwrapped the package slowly, then stared at the coat. Eliza, your old one is falling apart. Don't argue. I can't accept this. Why not? It's too much. It's a coat, Isaiah. And you helped me when I had nothing. Let me do something for you. He ran his hand over the fabric, sturdy canvas lined with wool. Good quality, but practical. Not fancy. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, something close to emotion crossed his face. Thank you. You're welcome. He tried on the coat. It fit perfectly. She'd guessed his measurements right. He stood there in his new coat looking uncomfortable and pleased, and like he didn't know what to do with either feeling. It's good, he said finally. You look good in it. He flushed slightly and took it off, folding it carefully. I'll save it for winter. Or you could wear it now. It's June. So I don't need a coat in June, Eliza. She laughed, actually laughed, and realized it was the first time she'd laughed in his presence. His expression softened at the sound. What? She asked. Nothing. Just, you should laugh more often. So should you. I don't laugh. You used to, I bet. Before. The lightness in his face dimmed. Yeah, before. Eliza wanted to kick herself for bringing it up, but Isaiah just shook his head. It's all right. You're not wrong. I did laugh. Sarah used to tell me I laughed at everything. Drove her crazy sometimes. It was the first time he'd spoken about his wife without pain fracturing his voice. Tell me about her, Eliza said softly. Sarah. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down at the table and Eliza sat across from him. She was small, he said, barely came up to my shoulder. Had red hair that she hated, said it made her look like a barn. But I loved it, especially in sunlight. It'd catch fire. He smiled faintly at the memory. She was stubborn. Once she decided something, that was it. No changing her mind. She decided she wanted to marry me, and I didn't stand a chance. How did you meet? Her father ran the freight office where I worked. She'd come in to help with the books. I was terrified of her. This tiny woman with fire in her eyes telling me I'd loaded the wagon wrong. He shook his head. She was right, of course. She usually was. And Emily? His smile grew and broke at the same time. Emily looked just like her mother. Same red hair, same stubbornness. 6 years old and already bossing me around. She wanted to drive the freight wagon. I told her she had to wait until she was bigger. She said she was plenty big enough, thank you very much. Tears slid down his cheeks, but he kept talking. The day Sarah got sick, Emily brought her flowers. Wild ones from the field behind our house. Said they'd make Mama feel better. 3 days later, Emily started coughing. His voice cracked. I couldn't save either of them. Just watch them slip away. Eliza reached across the table and took his hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. After they died, people kept saying things like, they're in a better place, and God needed angels. But I didn't want them to be angels. I wanted them here, with me, being stubborn and bringing me flowers and telling me I loaded the wagon wrong. Of course you did, Eliza said, tears streaming down her own face. That's not selfish, that's love. Then why does it hurt so much? Because love doesn't stop when someone dies. It just keeps going with nowhere to land. Isaiah looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression opened. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just someone who knows what it's like to lose things. What did you lose? She'd never told him about Kansas City, about Clayton Harper, about the life she'd built and watched crumble because one man decided she owed him something she wouldn't give. So she told him now. She told him about the dress shop where she'd learned her trade, about the clients who'd trusted her, about Clayton Harper's attention, his gifts, his slow escalation from friendly to possessive, about the night she'd finally said no, and the systematic destruction that followed. He took everything, she said. My work, my reputation, my sense of safety. I had to leave town in the middle of the night because I was afraid of what he'd do next. Isaiah's hand tightened on hers. Did he hurt you? Not physically. But he made me afraid to exist. Afraid to work, to talk to people, to be seen. Because he'd convinced everyone I was something I wasn't. That's why you ran. Yes. And why you were so scared when you got to Dustwater. I thought it would be the same. That people would believe the worst of me. That I'd never be safe anywhere. But you are safe, here, at the ranch. I am. She squeezed his hand. Because you showed me that not all men are like Clayton Harper. That kindness still exists. That someone might see me and not judge me. They sat in silence, hands clasped across the table, two broken people who'd found unexpected solace in each other. Eliza, Isaiah said finally, I'm glad you knocked on my door that first night. So am I. And I'm glad you keep coming back. Where else would I go? He smiled a real smile, small but genuine. Right here. She laughed through her tears. Right here. That night, as Eliza rode back to the double bar under stars that stretched across the prairie like scattered diamonds, she realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. She was falling in love with Isaiah Dune. She didn't tell him, of course. How could she? Isaiah was still learning to be her friend. The idea of anything more would send him retreating back into that fortress of grief he'd built around himself. So Eliza kept her feelings locked away and continued her Sunday visits as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She noticed things now that she hadn't before. The way his eyes crinkled when he almost smiled. The careful way he listened when she spoke, like every word mattered. The quiet competence of his hands as he worked, fixing a broken chair leg, mending a harness, chopping wood, with precise, economical movements. She noticed that he'd started keeping the cabin warmer on Sundays, that he bought coffee he knew she preferred, that he'd repaired the wobbly table leg she'd mentioned once in passing. Small things, but they accumulated like snowfall, building into something she couldn't ignore. July brought heat that baked the prairie hard as stone. At the double bar, Eliza worked in her small room with the window open, sweat dripping onto the fabric she was hemming. The ranch hands complained about the weather. Mrs. Garrett complained about the ranch hands complaining. The cattle complained by refusing to move anywhere unless absolutely forced. On the third Sunday of July, Eliza rode to Dustwater through heat that shimmered off the ground in waves. By the time she reached Isaiah's cabin, her dress was stuck to her back, and her hair had escaped its pins. Isaiah took one look at her and said, "You're going to get heat stroke riding in this weather." "I'm fine. You're red as a beet. Come inside." The cabin was blessedly cool. He'd kept the stove off and the windows open to catch any breeze. He poured her water from a pitcher he'd kept in the coldest corner. "Drink," he ordered. She drank, and the water was so cold it made her teeth ache. "Thank you. You shouldn't have ridden today." "I wanted to see you." Something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe, or pleasure quickly hidden. "Still, it's not safe." "Isaiah, I ride 20 miles every Sunday. Heat or rain or wind. I'm not going to stop because of weather." "Why not?" The question hung between them, weighted with things neither of them were ready to say. "Because these Sundays matter to me," Eliza said finally. "Because you matter to me." Isaiah looked away. "Eliza, I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. "I'm just telling you the truth. You're my friend, my best friend if I'm being honest, and I'm not going to let a little heat keep me from seeing you." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're my best friend too. My only friend, actually." "Then we're agreed. Sundays continue, weather be damned." He almost smiled. "Stubborn woman. You have no idea." They spent the afternoon inside playing cards, a game Isaiah had taught her, and talking about nothing in particular. The heat pressed against the windows like something alive, but inside the cabin, they were safe and cool and comfortable. Around 5, someone knocked on the door. Isaiah's expression shuddered. He rarely got visitors. Eliza felt her stomach tighten as he stood and opened the door. A man stood on the step, tall, well-dressed, with polished boots and a watch chain glinting at his vest. His eyes swept past Isaiah and landed on Eliza. She felt the blood drain from her face. Clayton Harper smiled. "Well, Miss Monroe, fancy meeting you here." Isaiah moved to block the doorway. "Who are you?" "Clayton Harper, sir. An old friend of Miss Monroe's from Kansas City. I've been looking for her." "I'm not your friend," Eliza said, standing. Her legs felt like water, but she kept her voice steady. "And I don't want to see you." "Now, Eliza, that's hardly fair. I've come all this way." "Get off my property," Isaiah said quietly. Clayton's smile didn't waver. "I'm merely here to speak with Miss Monroe. We have unfinished business." "We have nothing," Eliza said. "I left Kansas City to get away from you." "Is that what you told these good people, that you were running away?" Clayton's voice was smooth, practiced. "Did you tell them why? Did you tell them what you did?" "I didn't do anything." "She led me on," Clayton said to Isaiah, as if Eliza wasn't standing right there. "Made promises she didn't keep. Left town owing me money." "That's a lie." Eliza's voice cracked. "Is it I have witnesses who'll testify to your character, Miss Monroe? To your friendliness with men in positions to help you?" "You're the one who wouldn't leave me alone?" Eliza said, anger overriding fear. "You're the one who showed up at my door uninvited. You're the one who tried to force yourself—" "Careful," Clayton said, his smile turning sharp. "Slander is a serious accusation." Isaiah stepped fully outside, forcing Clayton back. "I don't know what happened in Kansas City, and I don't care. But you're not welcome here. Leave. I merely want to speak with Miss Monroe." She doesn't want to speak with you. Perhaps she should speak for herself. She did. You didn't listen. Now I'm telling you, leave. Clayton's eyes narrowed. And who are you? Her protector. Her employer. The implication was clear and filthy. Isaiah's jaw clenched. I'm the man telling you to get off my property before I remove you myself. I see. Clayton looked past him at Eliza. So this is what you've been doing out here. Playing house with frontier trash. How industrious of you, Eliza. I always knew you'd land on your feet. Isaiah's fist caught Clayton square in the jaw. The punch came so fast Eliza barely saw it. One moment Clayton was standing sneering. The next he was on the ground, hand to his face, blood trickling from his lip. You'll regret that, Clayton spat. I'll have the law do it. Isaiah said, his voice flat and cold. Go to the sheriff. Tell him you came to a man's home uninvited, harassed a woman who didn't want to see you and got what you deserved. See how that plays. Clayton struggled to his feet, rage distorting his features. You have no idea who I am, what I can do. Don't care. Get out. For a moment, Eliza thought Clayton might charge at Isaiah. But something in Isaiah's stance, the easy balance, the readiness made Clayton think better of it. This isn't over, he said, wiping blood from his chin. Yes, it is, Isaiah said. You're going to leave Dustwater tonight. If I see you in this town again, if I hear you've been asking about Miss Monroe, if you so much as breathe near her, I'll finish what I started. Understand? Clayton's smile was pure venom. Enjoy your little whore Dune. She'll betray you too eventually. It's what she does. Isaiah moved forward, and Clayton scrambled back, nearly tripping in his haste to get away. He hurried down the path, threw one last poisonous look over his shoulder, and disappeared into the evening. Isaiah stood watching until he was out of sight. Then he turned back to the cabin. Eliza was sitting on the step, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Hey, Isaiah said gently, kneeling beside her. Hey, you're all right. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I brought him here. You didn't bring him. He followed you. That's not your fault. He called me. He said I was... He lied. He's a liar and a coward, and nothing he said was true. But the town, they'll hear about this. They'll think... Let them think whatever they want. Isaiah took her hands in his. Eliza, look at me. She raised her eyes to his. I know what you are, he said firmly. You're a seamstress, a friend, a good woman who ran from a bad man. And nothing that bastard says will change what I know to be true. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You hit him. I did. You could get in trouble. I don't care. Isaiah. He hurt you. Maybe not with his hands, but he hurt you. And I won't stand by and let him do it again. His grip tightened on her hands. I won't let anyone hurt you, Eliza. Not while I'm breathing. She started crying in earnest, then great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Isaiah pulled her against his chest and held her while she broke apart, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring, You're safe. I've got you. You're safe. And she believed him. By the time Eliza had cried herself out full, dark had fallen. Isaiah helped her inside, sat her at the table, and made coffee. Her hands shook as she wrapped them around the cup. Do you think he'll leave? She asked. If he's smart. And if he's not, then I'll deal with it. I don't want you getting hurt because of me. Isaiah sat across from her. Eliza, that man is a bully. Bullies fold when someone stands up to them. He's not going to come back. How do you know? Because I saw his face when I hit him. He's used to intimidating people who can't fight back. He's not used to someone hitting back. Eliza wanted to believe him. But she'd seen Clayton destroy her life once before. She knew what he was capable of. What if he spreads rumors, she said. What if he tells people that you're living in sin with frontier trash? Isaiah's mouth twisted. Let him. The people in this town who matter know you. They know your work. They know your character. Do they? Or do they just know I'm the woman who stays with you on Sundays? Does it matter what they think? Yes, Isaiah, your reputation. My reputation was destroyed 3 years ago when my town blamed me for a man's death. I've got nothing left to lose. He reached across the table and took her hand again. But you do. You have a job, a future. If staying here damages that, then maybe you shouldn't come back. Don't say that. I'm serious. I won't let my past ruin your future. You're not ruining anything, Eliza said fiercely. And I'm not going to let Clayton Harper or anyone else dictate who I see or where I go. I choose to be here, with you. Something flickered in Isaiah's eyes. Hope maybe, or fear of hope. Why? Because you're the first person in years who's treated me like I matter, who's defended me, who's let me be myself without expectation or judgment. Her voice dropped. Because these Sundays are the best part of my week, and I'm not giving them up. Not for Clayton Harper, not for anyone. Isaiah stared at her across the table, and for the first time since she'd known him, his carefully controlled expression cracked completely. Raw emotion flooded his face, gratitude and pain, and something else she couldn't quite name. I don't deserve you, he said hoarsely. That's not your decision to make. Eliza. I'm not some fragile thing you need to protect from yourself, Isaiah. I know what I want, and I want to be here, with you. Is that all right? He swallowed hard. Yes. Good. She squeezed his hand. Then it settled. They sat in silence, hands clasped, the coffee growing cold between them. Finally, Isaiah said, You should stay tonight. It's too late to ride back. All right. He made up her usual place by the stove, and they settled into their respective sleeping spots. But Eliza lay awake long into the night, listening to Isaiah's breathing and replaying the afternoon in her mind. He'd hit Clayton Harper, without hesitation, without calculation. Just pure instinctive defense. He'd called her his best friend. He'd said he wouldn't let anyone hurt her. And when she'd said she wanted to be with him, he'd said yes. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even a confession of deeper feeling. But it was something. A crack in the wall he'd built. A glimpse of the man he'd been before grief had hollowed him out. Maybe it was enough to build on. The next morning, Eliza woke to find Isaiah already gone. A note on the table read, Had to make an early freight run. Be back by noon. Help yourself to breakfast. Stay if you want. She smiled at the note so typically, Isaiah offering her his space without fuss, and set about making coffee and eggs. By the time he returned dusty and tired, she'd cleaned the cabin and started mending a torn shirt she'd found in his trunk. You didn't have to do that, he said, eyeing the clean dishes and swept floor. I wanted to. Consider it payment for letting me stay. You don't owe me payment. Then consider it friendship. He nodded and sat down heavily. I asked around town this morning. Harper checked out of the hotel last night, took the late stage. Relief flooded through her. He's gone. Looks like it. Thank God. But, Eliza, Isaiah said carefully, people are talking. About him showing up here, about what he said. Her stomach clenched. What are they saying? That you've got a past. That there might be truth to Harper's words. He held up a hand when she started to protest. I told them Harper was a liar and a coward. The Reverend backed me up, said you've been nothing but honest and hardworking since you arrived, but you should know, the gossip exists. Of course it does, Eliza said bitterly. It always does. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. I hit him in front of witnesses. That didn't help. You hit him because he deserved it. I'm not sorry about that. Isaiah rubbed his face. The thing is, Eliza, if you keep coming here, the talk will get worse. People will assume things. Let them assume. It could hurt your position at the ranch. Mrs. Garrett knows my character. Does she? Or does she just know you're a good seamstress who doesn't cause trouble? The question stung because it was valid. Mrs. Garrett had hired her based on a letter and 2 months of satisfactory work. If rumors reached the ranch, rumors about impropriety about a questionable past, would Mrs. Garrett defend her? Or would she quietly let her go to avoid scandal? "What are you saying?" Eliza asked. "That I should stop coming here." "I'm saying you should think about what's best for you." "What's best for me is being here, with you. Even if it cost you your job, even then." Isaiah looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Eliza, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. I spent months in Kansas City being reasonable, being careful, trying not to offend anyone or draw attention or do anything that might be misconstrued. And you know what happened? Clayton Harper destroyed me anyway." She stood, frustration boiling over. "I'm tired of living my life based on what other people might think or say. I'm tired of making myself small to fit someone else's idea of propriety. If people want to gossip, let them gossip. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters. The truth doesn't pay your rent. Then I'll find other work. Where Dustwater won't hire you if you're living in sin. I'm not living in sin. I'm visiting a friend. They won't see it that way." "Then they're wrong." "Yes, they are, but that doesn't change reality." Eliza wanted to scream. Instead, she took a deep breath and said, "Isaiah, I appreciate your concern. But I'm not a child. I know the risks, and I'm telling you, I'm willing to take them." "Why?" "Because you're worth it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Isaiah stared at her, something desperate and raw in his expression. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "It's true." "Because I can't." He stopped, swallowed. "I can't give you what you deserve." "I'm not asking for anything." "Yes, you are. Maybe not out loud, but you are. And I can't. I don't know how." He turned away, hands clenched into fists. "You should find someone whole, Eliza. Someone who can give you a future, marriage, children, a real life." "I don't want that with someone else." "You should." "But I don't." He spun back to face her. "Why? Why do you keep coming back to a broken man in a dying town? What are you hoping for?" "I'm not hoping for anything except what we already have. Your friendship, your company, these Sundays." She moved closer. "Isaiah, I'm not asking you to marry me or love me or give me anything you're not ready to give. I'm just asking you to let me be here, to let me care about you. Is that so terrible?" "Yes," he said hoarsely. "Because what happens when you realize I'm not worth it? When you wake up and see that you've wasted years on a man who can't even—" His voice broke. "I can't love again, Eliza. I don't have it in me. Sarah and Emily took that when they died. I'm not asking you to love me. Then what are you asking? To be your friend, to share meals and conversations and Sundays. That's all." He searched her face. "That's really all you want?" She lied. "Yes." He must have known it was a lie, but he was desperate enough to believe it. "All right, then we'll keep things as they are." "Good." "But Eliza, if the gossip gets worse, if it threatens your job, you have to promise me you'll reconsider." "I promise." Another lie, but a necessary one. They spent the rest of the day in careful companionship, neither quite willing to address the conversation they'd just had. Eliza rode back to the double bar. As the sun set, her heart full of complicated feelings she couldn't name. She'd told Isaiah she only wanted friendship, but sitting in that cabin watching him struggle to articulate his feelings, she'd realized something terrifying. She didn't just love Isaiah Dune. She was in love with him. Deeply, completely, impossibly, in love with a man who didn't think he could love her back. And she had no idea what to do about it. August arrived with thunderstorms that turned the prairie into a muddy mess. At the double bar, the roof leaked in 3 places, and Mrs. Garrett's temper frayed proportionally. Eliza worked long hours repairing water-damaged linens and dodging the ranch hands who tracked mud everywhere. She hadn't seen Isaiah in 2 weeks, The roads were too dangerous for the Sunday ride, but they'd started writing letters. His were short, practical, full of updates about freight runs and weather. Hers were longer, chattier, full of stories about the ranch. She lived for those letters, for the proof that he was thinking about her even when they couldn't see each other. The third Sunday of August, the rain finally broke. Eliza saddled her horse at dawn and rode through mud that sucked at the horse's hooves. She arrived at Isaiah's cabin soaked and filthy. He took one look at her and shook his head. "You're insane." "I missed you." Something in his face softened. "I missed you too." She changed into dry clothes, one of his shirts and a pair of trousers she'd altered to fit while he made coffee. They spent the day inside playing cards and talking, and it felt like coming home. Around noon, someone knocked on the door. Eliza tensed, but Isaiah squeezed her hand reassuringly before answering. It was Reverend Whitmore. "Isaiah, Miss Monroe." He nodded to them both. "I apologize for interrupting, but I wanted to speak with you." "Come in," Isaiah said, stepping aside. The Reverend entered, removed his hat, and looked uncomfortable. "I'm here on behalf of several families in town. They've asked me to address a situation." "What situation?" Eliza asked, though she already knew. "The nature of your relationship with Mr. Dune. People are concerned about the propriety of your frequent visits." "We're friends," Isaiah said flatly. "I understand that, and I believe you. But appearances matter, especially for a young unmarried woman. Miss Monroe, your reputation has already been damaged by Clayton Harper's lies," Eliza said. "What more can these people say?" "They can say quite a lot, unfortunately. And I'm concerned that continued visits might jeopardize your position at the double bar. Mrs. Garrett is a fair woman, but she's also concerned with propriety." Ice flooded Eliza's veins. "Has someone spoken to Mrs. Garrett?" The Reverend hesitated. "Mrs. Patterson mentioned the situation to her sister, who mentioned it to Mrs. Garrett's cook. I can't say what's been communicated directly, but word travels." "Of course it does," Eliza said bitterly. "I'm not here to judge you," Reverend Whitmore said gently. "I know your character. I know Isaiah's character. But I also know how frontier towns work. And I'm worried that this situation will harm you both." "What do you suggest?" Isaiah asked. The Reverend looked between them. "Either Miss Monroe stops visiting or you marry." Silence crashed through the cabin. "That's not—" Eliza started. "We're not," Isaiah said simultaneously. Reverend Whitmore held up his hands. "I know it's not what either of you want to hear, but from a practical standpoint, marriage would solve the problem. Miss Monroe's reputation would be protected. The gossip would stop. You could continue your friendship without censure." "Marriage is more than a solution to gossip," Isaiah said quietly. "I agree. Which is why I'm not pushing you toward it. I'm simply presenting it as an option." He put his hat back on. "Think about it. And Miss Monroe, please be careful. Small towns have long memories and sharp tongues." He left, taking all the air in the room with him. Eliza and Isaiah stood in the oppressive silence, not looking at each other. Finally, Isaiah said, "He's right. You should stop coming here." "No." "Eliza." "No, I'm not going to let gossip dictate my life again. I won't." "Then you'll lose your job." "Then I'll find another one." "Where every town in Kansas Territory operates the same way. If you're branded as improper here, that reputation will follow you." "Then maybe I don't want to live in Kansas Territory." Isaiah turned to her. "What are you saying?" "I don't know," Eliza admitted. "I just know I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of pretending I don't care about you because someone might disapprove. You care about me." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes, I care about you. More than I should probably, but I do." He looked at her like she'd just confessed something terrifying. "Eliza, I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. "I know how you feel. About Sarah. About not being able to love again. I'm not expecting you to change. I need you to know that you matter to me. That these Sundays are the only thing keeping me sane, and I'm not willing to give them up. Isaiah crossed to her, and for one wild moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he took both her hands in his. I care about you too, he said quietly. More than I thought I could care about anyone again. But I don't know what that means. I don't know what I can offer you. You don't have to offer me anything. Yes, I do, because you deserve everything, and I'm just this. He gestured at himself at the cabin, at the emptiness he carried. This is all I am. Then this is enough. It shouldn't be. But it is. They stood there, hands clasped, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Isaiah said, "We should talk about what the Reverend suggested. Marriage." Yes. Eliza's heart stuttered. What about it? Would it be the worst thing if we married? Are you asking me? I don't know. Maybe. He stopped, clearly struggling. I don't want you to lose your job because of me. And if marrying me would protect you, then maybe we should consider it. Isaiah, that's not a reason to get married. Why not people marry for practical reasons all the time? But we're not talking about practical. We're talking about us. Are we? He met her eyes. Because I don't know what we're talking about anymore, Eliza. All I know is that I don't want you to suffer because of me. Then stop trying to push me away. I'm not. Yes, you are. You keep telling me to leave to find someone better to protect my reputation. But I'm telling you, I don't want anyone else. I want to be here, with you. Even if it's just as friends. And if I want more than that. The words came out raw, desperate. What then? Eliza felt her heart stop. Do you? I don't know. Maybe. God. Eliza, I don't know anything anymore, except that I can't imagine Sundays without you. She stepped closer. Then don't imagine them. Don't push me away. Just let me stay. Even if I can't give you everything you deserve. You keep saying that, but you don't get to decide what I deserve. I do, and I'm choosing you. Something broke in Isaiah's expression, some last defense crumbling. He pulled her into his arms and held her, his face buried in her hair, his whole body shaking. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. Neither do I. I'm terrified I'll fail you. You won't. How do you know? Because you're the best man I've ever known. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. You really believe that? Yes. He searched her eyes, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Finding none, he leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, like he was asking permission with every breath. Eliza melted into him, her hands coming up to frame his face, and kissed him back with all the emotion she'd been holding inside for months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaiah rested his forehead against hers. I don't know what happens next, he said. Neither do I. But we'll figure it out together. Together, he repeated like testing the word. Together, she confirmed. And standing in that small cabin holding each other in the afternoon light, they made a choice. Not to be perfect, not to have all the answers, but to try. Together. Whatever came next, they'd face it side by side. They spent the rest of that Sunday in a strange, tentative happiness, neither quite believing what had happened between them. Isaiah made dinner with hands that shook slightly. Eliza set the table and kept stealing glances at him, half afraid he'd take it all back. But when he caught her looking, he smiled, small and uncertain, but real. After they ate, Isaiah walked her outside to where her horse was tethered. The evening sky had cleared, stars beginning to pierce through the deepening blue. You'll be careful riding back, he asked. I always am. He nodded, then seemed to gather his courage. Eliza, about what happened today. Are you regretting it already? No. God, no. He took her hand. I just want to make sure you understand what you're getting into. I'm not an easy man to love. Good thing I'm not an easy woman. He huffed a laugh, an actual laugh, and pulled her close. When will I see you again? Next Sunday. That's too long. Her heart swelled. I could come Wednesday evening after my work's done. The ride is worth it, if you want me to come. I want you to come. She kissed him, then soft and quick, before climbing onto her horse. He stood watching as she rode away, and when she looked back, he was still there, hand raised in farewell. Eliza arrived at the double bar well after dark, her body exhausted, but her spirit soaring. She unsaddled the horse, rubbed it down, and was heading to her room when Mrs. Garrett's voice stopped her. Miss Monroe, a word, please. Ice replaced the warmth in Eliza's chest. She followed Mrs. Garrett into the main house, into the parlor where the older woman sat with her hands folded in her lap. Sit, Mrs. Garrett said. Eliza sat. I've been hearing stories, Mrs. Garrett began, about you and a man in Dustwater, a freight driver named Isaiah Dune. He's my friend. So I've heard. I've also heard you spend every Sunday with him, alone, in his cabin. It's not improper, Mrs. Garrett. We're just friends. Miss Monroe, I hired you because you seemed respectable, hard-working, but these rumors are lies spread by a man who wanted to hurt me. Eliza leaned forward. Mrs. Garrett, I won't lie to you. Yes, I visit Isaiah on Sundays. Yes, we're alone together. But nothing inappropriate happens. He's a good man who offered me shelter when I had nowhere else to go. He's my friend, that's all. Mrs. Garrett studied her. That's all? Eliza thought about the kiss, about the way Isaiah had held her, about the tentative hope growing between them. That's all anyone needs to know, she said carefully. Miss Monroe, I run a respectable ranch. I can't have my staff embroiled in scandal. I understand. Do you? Because if these rumors continue, if they grow worse, I'll have no choice but to let you go. The words landed like a blow. Mrs. Garrett, please. I'm not saying I want to. Your work is excellent. The men respect you, but I have to think about the ranch's reputation. She softened slightly. I'm giving you a choice, Miss Monroe. Stop seeing this man or find other employment. Eliza felt the world narrow to a single point. Everything she'd built here, the job, the security, the future, balanced against the man in the cabin who'd finally opened his heart. How long do I have to decide? She asked quietly. The end of the month. That gives you 2 weeks. Mrs. Garrett stood. I'm sorry, Miss Monroe, but this is the way it has to be. Eliza returned to her room, closed the door, and sat on the bed in the dark. 2 weeks. She had 2 weeks to choose between survival and love. Except it wasn't really a choice, was it? She'd already chosen. The moment Isaiah had kissed her, the moment she'd kissed him back, she'd made her decision. She just had to figure out how to survive it. On Wednesday evening, Eliza rode to Dustwater with her heart in her throat. She hadn't written to Isaiah about Mrs. Garrett's ultimatum. Some things needed to be said in person. He was waiting for her, and the smile that lit his face when he saw her made everything hurt more. You came, he said, pulling her into his arms the moment she dismounted. I said I would. They went inside, and Isaiah had dinner ready, stew and bread, simple but warm. They ate and talked, and Eliza tried to memorize every detail. The way lamplight caught in his hair, the rough timbre of his voice, the careful way he listened. After dinner they sat by the stove, Isaiah in his chair, and Eliza on the floor with her head against his knee. His hand rested in her hair, fingers occasionally combing through the strands. I talked to Reverend Whitmore yesterday, Isaiah said quietly. About what? About us. About marriage. Eliza's breath caught. What did he say? That he'd marry us whenever we wanted. No questions asked. Isaiah's hand stilled. I've been thinking about it. About what it would mean. And I think maybe we should do it. Eliza sat up and turned to face him. Are you proposing? I'm suggesting. There's a difference. Not much of one. He smiled faintly. Eliza, I know it's fast. I know it's not romantic. But if we married, you'd be protected. The gossip would stop. You could keep your job at the ranch. Is that the only reason? No. He took her hands. I want to be with you. I want to wake up next to you and eat meals with you and not count the days until Sunday. I want to know you're safe and cared for. And I want to try to be the man you deserve. You already are. I'm not. But maybe I could be. With you. He searched her face. So what do you say? Will you marry me? It wasn't the proposal she'd imagined as a girl. No flowers, no bended knee, no pretty words about eternal love. But it was honest. It was Isaiah. And it was enough. Yes, she said. I'll marry you. Relief and terror warred in his expression. You're sure? I'm sure. He pulled her into his lap and kissed her deeper this time, more certain. She felt his heart hammering against hers, felt the tremor in his hands as they cupped her face. When they broke apart, he said roughly, I'll try to make you happy. You already do. I mean it, Eliza. I know I'm broken. I know I'm not what you deserve. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be enough for you. Isaiah. She framed his face with her hands. You're already enough. You've always been enough. He kissed her again, and this time there was something desperate in it, like he was trying to believe her through sheer force of will. They made plans that night. They'd marry at the end of the week, no big ceremony, just them and the Reverend, and maybe a witness or two. Eliza would give notice at the double bar. They'd live in Isaiah's cabin until they could afford something bigger. It would be tight difficult, but they'd manage. What about your freight work? Eliza asked. I'll keep doing it. We'll need the money. I can take in mending. You'll have enough to do keeping house. I can do both. He looked at her. You don't have to prove anything, Eliza. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to contribute. You're marrying me. That's contribution enough. That's not how marriage works. How would you know you've never been married? Neither have you. She paused. Not counting before. The words hung awkwardly between them. Isaiah's expression shuddered. I'm sorry, Eliza said quickly. I didn't mean... It's all right, you're right. I was married before. He stood moving to the window. Sarah and I were married for 8 years. It was good. We were happy. Tell me about it. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, We married young. I was 22, she was 19. Her father thought I was too poor, too rough. But Sarah didn't care. She said she'd rather be poor with me than comfortable with anyone else. She sounds wonderful. She was. His voice cracked. And I failed her. When she got sick, I couldn't save her. I held her hand and promised her she'd be fine, and she died anyway. Then Emily. He stopped, shoulders shaking. Eliza went to him, wrapped her arms around him from behind. You didn't fail them. I did. A husband's supposed to protect his family. I couldn't. You can't protect anyone from fever, Isaiah. That's not failure. That's just life. It doesn't feel like life. It feels like I killed them. You didn't. You loved them. That's all anyone can do. He turned in her arms, and she saw tears tracking down his face. I'm afraid I'll fail you too. You won't. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you're trying. Because you care enough to be afraid. He held her tight face buried in her shoulder, and she felt him break. Not catastrophically, but like ice cracking painful, but necessary. She held him while he cried for his lost wife, his lost daughter, his lost life. When he finally pulled back, eyes red and voice hoarse, he said, "I'm sorry. Don't apologize for grieving. It's not fair to you. Starting a marriage with a man who's still mourning his first wife. Isaiah, I'm not asking you to stop loving Sarah. She was your wife, the mother of your child. Of course you still love her. I'd be worried if you didn't. But nothing. Love doesn't replace love. It just adds to it. You can love Sarah and Emily and still have room to love me, if that's what you want." He searched her face. "What if I can't? Can't what?" "Love you the way you deserve. Then you'll love me the way you can, and that'll be enough. You're too good for me. Stop saying that. It's true. It's not. We're two broken people trying to build something whole. That's all." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I don't deserve you. Lucky for you, I'm not asking permission." He laughed, actually laughed, and pulled her close. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the lamplight. Two damaged souls finding unexpected shelter in each other's arms. On Friday, Eliza gave her notice to Mrs. Garrett. The older woman's expression was carefully neutral. "You're leaving because of my ultimatum." "I'm leaving because I'm getting married." Mrs. Garrett's eyebrows rose. "To the freight driver." "Isaiah Dune, yes." That was fast. Sometimes things move quickly. Or recklessly. Eliza kept her voice steady. "Mrs. Garrett, I appreciate everything you've done for me. This job gave me security when I needed it. But I'm choosing Isaiah. I'm choosing a future with him. Even though you've only known him a few months. I know him well enough." Mrs. Garrett sighed. "I hope you're right, Miss Monroe, because frontier marriages are hard even under the best circumstances, and you're starting with scandal and gossip. We'll manage. Perhaps." She stood. "You can work through the week. I'll pay you through the end of the month as a wedding gift." The kindness surprised her. "Thank you, Mrs. Garrett." "Don't thank me yet. Come back in a year and tell me if it was worth it." Eliza wanted to say it already was, but she just nodded and left to pack her things. On Saturday morning, Eliza loaded her possessions onto a borrowed wagon and rode to Dustwater for the last time as an unmarried woman. The town was buzzing with news of the impending wedding. Some faces were friendly. Others weren't. She didn't care. Isaiah met her at the edge of town, and the relief on his face when he saw her made everything worth it. "You came," he said. "Did you think I wouldn't? I was afraid you'd change your mind. Realize you were making a mistake. The only mistake would be walking away from you." He helped her unload the wagon, carrying her trunk and carpet bag into the cabin that would now be their home. The space felt different already, not just his anymore, but theirs. That evening, they walked to the church together. Reverend Whitmore was waiting with his wife as witness. The ceremony was simple, almost stark. No flowers, no music, no guests. Just words spoken in a quiet church as the sun set outside. "Do you, Isaiah Dune, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Eliza Monroe, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Isaiah kissed her, and it felt like sealing a promise. Not just to each other, but to themselves. To the possibility of healing. To the chance of happiness. They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, and when Isaiah opened the door, he swept her up in his arms. "What are you doing?" she laughed, "carrying my wife over the threshold. That's a superstition. Humor me." He carried her inside and set her down gently. Their cabin now waited in the lamplight. Isaiah had cleaned everything, put fresh linens on the bed, even found wildflowers for the table. "You did all this?" Eliza asked, tears stinging her eyes. "I wanted you to feel welcome." "Isaiah, I'm already home." He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. I'm going to try to be a good husband. I know. I'll probably fail sometimes. So will I. But I'll keep trying. That's all I ask. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in their small home. Then Isaiah said quietly, I'm scared. Me too. What if I can't make you happy? What if I can't make you happy? That's not possible. Why not? Because you already do. He pulled back to look at her. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, every moment you're here, you make me happy. I didn't think I could feel that again, but you proved me wrong. Good, she said, smiling through tears. Keep being wrong. I'll try. He kissed her, and this time there was no hesitation, no fear. Just the two of them together beginning something new. That night, lying in bed beside her husband Eliza, listened to his steady breathing and felt peace settle over her. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Dustwater would gossip. Money would be tight. Isaiah would have bad days when grief overwhelmed him. She'd have moments of doubt, of fear of wondering if she'd made the right choice. But right now, in this moment, she had everything she needed. A warm bed, a safe home, and a man beside her who'd seen her at her most desperate and offered shelter without condition. She'd asked where she'd sleep, and he'd said, right here. Now, right here meant forever. The first weeks of marriage were harder than Eliza had anticipated. Not because of Isaiah, he was attentive, gentle, trying his best, but because of everything else. The cabin was too small for two people and all their possessions. They kept bumping into each other, stepping on each other's things. Isaiah was used to solitude and silence. Eliza was used to the controlled chaos of ranch life. Neither quite knew how to navigate shared space. Money was tight. Isaiah's freight work paid, but not well. Eliza took in mending, but Dustwater's families were hesitant to hire the woman who'd trapped Isaiah Dune into marriage. She heard the whispers at the general store. Poor man stuck with damaged goods. She knew what she was doing. Give it 6 months before he regrets it. Isaiah heard them too. She saw it in the tightness around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched when they walked through town together. But he never let go of her hand, never acted ashamed, just kept walking head high, daring anyone to say something to his face. No one did. 3 weeks into their marriage, Isaiah came home from a freight run to find Eliza crying at the table. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately kneeling beside her. "I went to return Mrs. Patterson's mending. She said she didn't need my services anymore, said her daughter would do her sewing from now on." "She's lying." "I know. But Isaiah, that's the third family this week. If I can't get work, then we'll manage on my wages. That's not enough, not long term. Then I'll take more runs. You're already gone 3 days a week. I'll make it 4. No." She grabbed his hands. "I didn't marry you to never see you. And I didn't marry you to watch you struggle." They stared at each other, the reality of their situation settling between them. "We'll figure it out," Isaiah said finally. "We always do." But that night, lying in bed, Eliza heard him awake beside her, breathing too carefully. He was worried. They both were. The next morning, Reverend Whitmore knocked on their door. "I have a proposition," he said when they invited him in. "My wife's illness has worsened. She needs full-time care help with dressing meals, managing the house. I can't afford a nurse, but I can offer room and board plus a small wage. Would you be interested, Mrs. Dune?" Eliza looked at Isaiah, who nodded slightly. "Yes," she said. "I would." "Good. Can you start Monday?" "I can start today." So Eliza became companion and caretaker to Martha Whitmore, a frail woman with kind eyes and a wicked sense of humor. The work was demanding, but satisfying. Martha needed help with everything, but she was grateful, patient, and loved to talk. "Tell me about your husband," Martha said one afternoon as Eliza helped her with lunch. "What do you want to know? Is he good to you?" "Very good." even with the grief he carries? Eliza paused. You know about that. Thomas told me. About Isaiah's first family. About what happened. Martha's eyes were compassionate. That's a heavy burden for a man to carry. It is. And for his new wife to share. I don't mind. Don't you? Even a little? Eliza considered the question honestly. Sometimes. When he has bad days and I can't reach him. When I know he's thinking about Sarah and Emily and wishing things were different. But mostly I'm just grateful he let me in at all. You love him. It wasn't a question, but Eliza answered anyway. Yes. Does he love you? I think so, maybe. He hasn't said it. Give him time. Men like Isaiah, men who've lost everything, they're careful with their hearts. But when they finally love again, they love fiercely. I hope you're right. I'm always right, Martha said with a smile. Ask Thomas. Working for the Whitmores gave Eliza purpose and income, but it also meant long days away from Isaiah. She'd leave after breakfast and return after dinner exhausted and smelling of sick room. Isaiah would have dinner waiting simple meals, but warm, and they'd eat together before falling into bed. They had so little time together. But the time they had felt precious. One night, a month into their marriage, Isaiah pulled her close and said, I'm glad I married you. Just glad. Happy. I'm happy I married you. Eliza's heart swelled. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was close. It was progress. I'm happy too, she whispered. Are you, even with everything being so hard, even with that? He kissed her forehead. You're stronger than I am. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You keep going even when things are impossible. You don't give up. Neither do you. I want to sometimes. The admission startled her. Want to what? Give up, run away, go back to being alone, because at least that was simple. He tightened his arms around her. But then I look at you and I can't. Because you make me want to try, want to be better, want to believe things can be good again. Tears slid down Eliza's cheeks. Isaiah, I'm not good at this, at being a husband again, at sharing my space and my life. But I'm trying. For you. Because you're worth trying for. You're worth trying for too. I don't feel like it most days. Then I'll believe it for both of us until you can believe it yourself. He held her tighter and she felt something in him shift, not break but open, like a door he'd kept locked finally swinging wide. Eliza, he said quietly, I think I might be falling in love with you. Her heart stopped. You think? No, I know. I am. Falling in love with you. Maybe already have. I don't know. I'm not good at recognizing it anymore. He pulled back to look at her face. Is that all right? She laughed through her tears. Is it all right, Isaiah? I've been in love with you since June. His eyes widened. You have? Yes, you idiot. Why do you think I kept coming back? Why do you think I married you? I thought... I don't know what I thought. That you needed stability, security. I needed you. He kissed her then deep and desperate and full of every emotion he'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he said, I love you, Eliza Dune. I love you too. Even though I'm broken. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He smiled a real genuine smile that lit his whole face. How did I get so lucky? You offered a cold woman shelter and asked nothing in return. This is karma. Best karma ever. They made love that night with a tenderness that took Eliza's breath away. Isaiah was careful, reverent, like he was memorizing every inch of her. And when they lay tangled together afterward, sweaty and satisfied, he whispered, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you happy. You already do. Then I'll spend it making you happier. deal. October arrived with cold winds and news that shook Dustwater to its core. Isaiah came home early from a freight run face pale and said, "There's fever at the Miller homestead. 3 of the children are sick." Eliza felt ice flood her veins. Fever. The same kind that killed Sarah and Emily. He sat down heavily at the table, and she saw his hands shaking. "Isaiah," she said carefully, "are you all right?" "No. Every time I close my eyes I see them. Sarah, Emily, dying while I stood there useless." He looked up at her. "What if it spreads? What if you get sick?" "I won't." "You don't know that." "Neither do you." "But what if?" "Then we'll deal with it. Together." She knelt beside him. "Isaiah, you can't protect me from everything. Life is dangerous, people get sick, accidents happen, but we can't live in fear of what might be." "I can't lose you." "You won't." "You don't know that." "You're right. I don't. But I know this right now, right here. I'm alive and healthy and yours, and I'm not going anywhere." He pulled her into his lap and held her like she might disappear. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll be careful, that you won't take unnecessary risks, that you'll stay away from sick people. Isaiah, please." The desperation in his voice broke her heart. "I promise." But 2 days later, Martha Whitmore developed the fever. Eliza found Martha shivering in bed, skin burning to the touch, eyes glassy with fever. Reverend Whitmore stood beside his wife, face gray with fear. "When did this start?" Eliza asked, already moving to wet cloths in the basin. "This morning. She said she felt cold. By noon the fever had taken hold." "Have you called the doctor?" "He's at the Miller homestead. 3 children died yesterday. 2 more are failing." Eliza's hands stilled. 3 children dead, Martha burning with fever, and Isaiah at home terrified of losing another person he loved. "I'll stay with her," Eliza said. "You should rest, Reverend. You'll need your strength." "I can't leave her." "You're not leaving her. I'm here. But you're no good to her if you collapse from exhaustion." He nodded reluctantly and left the room. Eliza spent the next hour cooling Martha's skin with wet cloths, coaxing water between her cracked lips, murmuring reassurances that felt hollow even as she spoke them. By evening, Martha was delirious, calling for children who'd grown and moved away years ago. Eliza held her hand and tried not to think about Isaiah's face when she'd promised to stay away from sick people. She should go home, tell Isaiah what was happening, but leaving Martha felt like abandonment, and Eliza had been abandoned enough to know exactly how that felt. So she stayed. At midnight, the door opened. Isaiah stood in the doorway, face carved from stone. "You broke your promise," he said quietly. "Martha needed me. I need you. Alive. Healthy. Not exposing yourself to the same fever that killed my wife and daughter." "Isaiah, I couldn't just leave her." "Yes, you could. You should have." Reverend Whitmore appeared behind Isaiah. "Mr. Dune, please. My wife is dying," Isaiah said flatly. "I've seen this fever before. I know how it ends, and I won't watch my wife catch it trying to delay the inevitable." "You don't know it's inevitable?" Eliza said. "Yes, I do." He moved into the room, grabbed her arm. "You're coming home." "I'm not leaving Martha." "Eliza." "No." She pulled free. "I made a commitment to care for her. I'm not breaking it because you're scared." "I'm not scared. I'm practical." "You're terrified, and I understand why. But I can't live my life avoiding every risk because you're afraid of losing me." "She's going to die anyway." The words echoed through the small room. Martha stirred on the bed, moaning softly. Reverend Whitmore's face crumpled. Isaiah seemed to realize what he'd said. "Reverend, I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." Thomas's voice was thick. "And you might be right. But she's my wife. And while she's still breathing, I'll do everything I can to save her. If Mrs. Dune is willing to help, I won't turn her away." Isaiah looked between them, jaw working. Then he turned to Eliza. If you stay, I can't watch this again. Then don't watch. Go home. I'll come back when I can. And if you get sick, then I get sick. And if you die, then you'll survive it, the same way you survived before. Something broke in his expression. I don't want to survive it again. I want you alive. I am alive, and I'm choosing to help someone who needs me. Please try to understand. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, I can't do this, and walked out. Eliza wanted to follow him, wanted to chase him down and make him understand. But Martha was burning up, and Reverend Whitmore was barely holding together, and she'd made a choice. She just hoped it wasn't the wrong one. For 3 days, Eliza lived at the Reverend's house, sleeping in snatches on the floor beside Martha's bed. The fever raged. Martha drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in memories. Reverend Whitmore prayed until his voice went hoarse, and Eliza kept cooling Martha's skin, forcing water down her throat, willing her to live. Isaiah didn't come back. On the 4th day, the fever broke. Martha's eyes cleared. Her skin cooled. She looked at Eliza and whispered, You're still here. Of course I am. Thomas said Isaiah was angry. He was scared. Are you going to lose him over this? I don't know. Martha squeezed her hand weakly. Go home. Make things right. I'll be fine now. Are you sure? Yes, and Eliza. Thank you for staying when you didn't have to. I had to. You're my friend. Martha smiled. Then I'm lucky to have you. Eliza walked home through cold October wind, exhausted and filthy, and terrified of what she'd find. Would Isaiah be angry? Would he have left? Would he look at her and see Sarah and Emily all over again? The cabin was dark when she arrived. Her heart sank. But then she opened the door and found Isaiah sitting at the table, in the near darkness, head in his hands. Isaiah. He looked up, and the relief that flooded his face nearly brought her to her knees. You're all right, he said hoarsely. I'm fine. Martha's fever broke. She's going to live. He stood cross to her and pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. I thought I'd lost you. You didn't. I thought you'd get sick. Thought I'd have to watch you die like I watched them die. I'm here. I'm alive. He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. I'm sorry. For what I said. For walking out. For being so afraid that I couldn't see past my own terror. Isaiah. No, let me say this. You were right. I was terrified. Am terrified. The thought of losing you makes me want to lock you away somewhere safe and never let you out. But that's not fair to you. That's not a marriage. That's a prison. I understand why you're scared. I know you do. But you shouldn't have to live your life accommodating my fear. You're a good woman, Eliza. The best I've ever known. And you saved Martha's life by staying. I was wrong to ask you to leave. Tears streamed down her face. I hated breaking my promise to you. You didn't break it. You made an impossible choice and chose compassion over safety. That's who you are. And I love you for it even when it terrifies me. I love you too, even when you're impossible. He huffed a laugh and kissed her forehead. I'm going to try to be better. To trust that you can take care of yourself. To not see Sarah and Emily every time you're in danger. And I'll try to understand when you're scared. To let you worry without taking it personally. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The best kind. They held each other in the dark cabin, two imperfect people trying to build something beautiful out of their broken pieces. That night, after Eliza had bathed and eaten and fallen into bed exhausted, Isaiah lay beside her and said quietly, I saw them while you were gone. Sarah and Emily. In my dreams, in my waking thoughts. They were everywhere. What did they say? Nothing. They just looked at me. And I realized something. He turned to face her. I've been carrying them like a weight. Like remembering them meant staying broken. But you were right. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry the loss without letting it crush you. Are you healing? I think so. Slowly, with your help. You're helping me too, you know. Every day you choose to try, you show me that broken things can be mended, that people can change, that love is possible even after loss. Do you really believe that? I do. I'm living proof. So are you. He kissed her softly. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You pulled back a blanket and said right here, that's all it took. That seems too simple. The best things usually are. November brought the first snow and news that spread through Dustwater like wildfire. The fever had passed. No new cases in 2 weeks. The Miller children who'd survived were recovering. Martha Whitmore was strong enough to sit up and take solid food. The town, which had been holding its breath, finally exhaled. Isaiah and Eliza celebrated by taking a rare day off together. They walked through Dustwater hand in hand, visited the general store, had lunch at the diner. People nodded greetings, some even smiled. The gossip hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had lost its venom. They're getting used to us, Eliza said as they walked home. Took them long enough. Are you complaining? You're the one who wanted to be left alone. That was before I had something worth being not alone for. She laughed and leaned into him. You're getting better at this, saying nice things. I have a good teacher. Flattery will get you everywhere. Good, because I plan to flatter you for the next 50 years. Only 50? However long we have. I'll take every day. They reached the cabin as snow began to fall in earnest. Inside, Isaiah built up the fire while Eliza made coffee. They sat together by the stove, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and watched snow transform the world outside their window. Do you ever think about the future? Eliza asked. Like what? Like children. A bigger house, growing old together. Isaiah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I try not to think too far ahead. It scares me. Why? Because I've learned that the future isn't guaranteed, that people you love can be taken in an instant, that planning for tomorrow is just setting yourself up for heartbreak. But if we don't plan, if we don't hope, what's the point? The point is right now. This moment, you and me and this cabin and the snow falling outside, that's all I can handle. Eliza understood, but she also knew that living only in the present was another way of being afraid. What if I want more than just the present? She asked gently. Like what? Like children. A family. A future we build together. Isaiah's arm tightened around her. I had that once, and I lost it. So did I. Different circumstances, but I lost my future too. Clayton Harper destroyed it, and I spent months being afraid to hope for anything better. But then I met you, and you showed me that hope is possible, that futures can be rebuilt. Eliza. I'm not asking you to promise me forever, Isaiah. I know you can't. None of us can. But I'm asking you to try. To believe that maybe, just maybe, we can have something good, something lasting. He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, I want that. God help me, I want it so badly it terrifies me. But what if I fail again? What if I can't protect you? Protect our children if we have them? Then we'll face it together, the same way we've faced everything else. You make it sound simple. It is simple, hard but simple. We love each other. We commit to trying. We take it one day at a time. One day at a time, he repeated like testing the words. That's all anyone can do. He turned to face her fully. All right, let's try. Let's plan a future. Build a family. Be stupid enough to hope. She kissed him, tasting coffee and promise, and the tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, they could have everything they'd lost and more. Winter deepened, and with it their marriage. They learned each other's rhythms, preferences, quirks. Isaiah discovered that Eliza sang while she sewed off-key but enthusiastic. Eliza discovered that Isaiah talked in his sleep, usually about freight manifests and wagon repairs. They fought sometimes, usually about money, or Isaiah's overprotectiveness, or Eliza's tendency to take on too much work. But they always made up, always found their way back to each other. In December, Eliza realized her monthly bleeding hadn't come. She waited another week, afraid to hope, afraid to tell Isaiah. But when the second week passed, with no sign, she couldn't keep it to herself any longer. She found him in the small barn behind the cabin, repairing a harness. "Isaiah?" "Yeah." He didn't look up from his work. "I need to tell you something." The tone of her voice made him set down the leather and turn to face her. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. At least I don't think so. But I think I might be pregnant." The color drained from his face. "You think?" "I'm 2 weeks late, maybe 3. I'm not completely sure, but—" He crossed to her in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. "Are you sure?" "Not completely, but probably." He held her at arm's length, searching her face. "How do you feel?" "Terrified, excited, hopeful, all of it at once." "Me too." His voice shook. "God, Eliza, me too." "Are you happy?" "I don't know. I think so. Ask me again when I'm not about to pass out." She laughed, and he pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair. "A baby," he whispered. "We're going to have a baby. If I'm right, I might not be. But if you are, then we're going to have a baby." He pulled back, and she saw tears in his eyes. "I'm scared." "So am I. What if something goes wrong? What if I lose you, lose the baby? Then we'll grieve and survive and keep going. But Isaiah, we can't live in fear of what might happen. We have to trust that we'll be all right." "I don't know if I can." "Then I'll trust for both of us, until you can trust yourself." He kissed her, desperate and tender all at once. "I love you. I love you too. If we have a boy, can we name him after my father?" "What was his name?" "Thomas. Same as the Reverend." "Thomas Dune. I like it. And if we have a girl—" Isaiah hesitated. "Could we name her Emily?" "After my daughter." Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. "I'd be honored." "You're sure? It won't feel like I'm trying to replace her." "You're not replacing her. You're honoring her. There's a difference." He held her close, and she felt him shaking. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a reason to hope again. For showing me that life can be good, even after it's been terrible. For loving me when I didn't think I could be loved." "You've given me all those things too." "Then we're even." "We're better than even. We're partners." "Partners," he agreed. "For however long we have." "For however long we have." The winter passed slowly. Eliza's pregnancy progressed, the nausea, the exhaustion, the way her body changed week by week. Isaiah hovered like a worried hen, constantly asking if she was all right, if she needed anything, if she should be resting. It drove her crazy and made her love him even more. By February, Eliza's condition was obvious to everyone in Dustwater. The town's attitude toward them shifted again. Married couples with babies were respectable. The scandal of their hasty wedding faded into memory. Martha Whitmore fully recovered knitted tiny clothes. Reverend Whitmore blessed them every Sunday. Even Mrs. Patterson, who'd refused Eliza's services months ago, brought over a cradle her own children had used. "I was wrong about you," Mrs. Patterson said stiffly. "You're a good woman. Isaiah is lucky to have you." "Thank you," Eliza said, too surprised to say more. Isaiah built a cradle rough but sturdy and set it beside their bed. He stocked the cabin with supplies, cloth for diapers, oil for the baby's skin, herbs the midwife recommended. He was preparing for a future he'd never thought he'd have again. One night in March, As they lay in bed with his hand on her swollen belly, Isaiah said quietly, "I felt Emily move like this. Inside Sarah. It feels the same. Does that bother you? No. It makes me feel like they're still part of my life, like they're blessing this new beginning. I like that." "Me too." He kissed her stomach. "Hello in there, this is your father. I'm going to try very hard not to mess this up." Eliza laughed. "You're already doing fine." "I haven't done anything yet." "You're here. You're trying. That's everything." The baby kicked, and Isaiah's face lit up. "Did you feel that? I feel everything. This child is part acrobat." "Good. Strong babies are healthy babies. Strong babies are also exhausting babies. We'll manage. We will. Together." "Together," he agreed and kissed her. On a warm April morning, Eliza's labor began. Isaiah rode for the midwife, his face white with terror. Eliza, calmer than she'd expected, breathed through the contractions and prepared herself for what was coming. The midwife arrived, an older woman named Ruth, who'd delivered half the babies in dust water. She examined Eliza, nodded approvingly, and said, "First babies take their time. Settle in. This could be a while." It was a while. Hours of pain, of pressure, of Isaiah pacing outside, while Eliza labored inside with Ruth's steady guidance. She thought about Sarah, who'd done this alone while Isaiah worked. She thought about Emily, who'd been born into Isaiah's waiting arms. She thought about the future she was bringing into being with every contraction. And when the baby finally came screaming and red and absolutely perfect, Eliza wept with relief and joy. "It's a boy," Ruth announced, placing the baby on Eliza's chest. Isaiah burst through the door, took one look at his wife and son, and fell to his knees beside the bed. "Is he all right?" he asked hoarsely. "Are you all right?" "We're perfect," Eliza said, stroking the baby's dark hair. "Come meet your son." Isaiah reached out with shaking hands and touched the baby's tiny fist. The baby's fingers curled around his father's thumb, and Isaiah's face crumpled. "Hello, Thomas," he whispered. "I'm your father, and I promise I'll do better this time. I'll keep you safe, love you fiercely, never take a single moment for granted." "You did fine the first time," Eliza said softly. "I'll do better this time," he repeated like a vow. They spent the rest of the day in bed together, Isaiah, Eliza, and baby Thomas, learning each other, marveling at this new life they'd created. Isaiah was terrified to hold the baby, at first afraid he'd break him. But Eliza showed him how, and soon Isaiah was cradling his son with the confidence of a man who'd done this before and was grateful for a second chance. "He looks like you," Eliza said, watching them. "No, he looks like you. He has your eyes. All babies have blue eyes. His are special." She laughed. "You're already biased." "I'm his father. I'm supposed to be biased." "Fair point." As the sun set outside their window, painting the prairie in shades of gold and rose, Isaiah looked at Eliza and said, "You asked me once if I thought about the future. I remember. I think about it now, all the time. I think about teaching Thomas to ride, to read, to be a good man. I think about growing old with you. About more children, maybe. About building a bigger house when we can afford it. About all the Sundays we'll have together. That's a lot of thinking. You gave me a reason to think that far ahead. You gave me hope. You gave it to me first. Then we're even. We're better than even." He leaned over and kissed her, careful of the baby sleeping between them. "I love you, Eliza Dune." "I love you too. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for pulling back that blanket and saying right here." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. "Best decision I ever made." "Mine too." Outside, the Kansas wind swept across the prairie, carrying with it the promise of spring. Inside the small cabin on the edge of Dustwater, 3 people slept wrapped in each other's warmth, a man who'd learned to hope again, a woman who'd found her home, and a baby who was loved beyond measure. Years would pass. There would be more children. Emily came first, followed by Sarah, and finally another boy they named Daniel. The cabin would grow into a real house with multiple rooms and a wide porch. Isaiah's freight business would expand into a successful trading company. Eliza's sewing would become sought after throughout the territory, her reputation for quality work spreading far beyond Dustwater. But the foundation of everything, the bedrock on which they built their life, came from that first night when Eliza had asked where she'd sleep, and Isaiah had pulled back a blanket and said two simple words: "Right here." Those words had meant warmth when she was freezing, safety when she was terrified, home when she was lost. And eventually they came to mean everything else: partnership, love, family, future. Isaiah had offered shelter expecting nothing in return. Eliza had accepted it and given him back his life. Together they proved that even in the harshest places, even after the worst losses, compassion could still triumph, dignity could still matter, and healing could still happen between two people brave enough to trust each other. Right here wasn't just a place. It was a promise, a commitment, a choice they made every single day to be present, to be kind, to be each other's unwavering refuge in a world that was often cold and unforgiving. And in that small Kansas town, where they'd once been strangers, Isaiah and Eliza Dune built something that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes, a legacy of steadfast kindness, of second chances of love that refused to quit, even when quitting would have been easier. They built a home, not just in wood and stone, but in each other's hearts. And there, in that sacred space they'd created together, they lived out the rest of their days, imperfect, stubborn, deeply human, and absolutely certain that choosing each other had been the rightest thing either of them had ever done. Because sometimes salvation comes not from grand gestures or perfect timing, but from someone seeing you at your lowest and saying simply, "You're safe here. You matter here. You belong right here with me for as long as you need." And sometimes, if you're very lucky, right here becomes forever.